For regular videos on ancient cultures and forgotten civilizations, please subscribe. Welcome to the Antiquities Travel Guide, a helping hand for visiting historic places. Follow us to different countries as we search for ancient artifacts. If you too wish to explore the ancient past through travel, we'll help you plan where to go, what to see, and how best to enjoy what you encounter. In this series of the ATG, you can accompany Tess and me on our trek through Turkey, homeland of the ancient Phrygians, Luwians, Trojans, Hittites, Lydians, Galatians, and Greeks. Come on, let's go. When traveling the world, it's nice to get some perspective, and one great way of achieving that is with a globe. Yeah, globes provide an enhanced sense of context and geographical literacy, which is beneficial to have whether you're a traveler or not. And I especially like MOVA Globes, the sponsor of today's video. What's so great about MOVA Globes? They rotate by themselves, without a cord, without batteries. What's the trick? It turns when it's exposed to ambient light. Hidden magnets inside provide the movement. This is first of its kind technology. I got one with an antique map, but they have more than 40 other designs as well. They even have an outer space collection featuring graphics by NASA and JPL. You can browse what you like at movaglobes.com. This will look great in your office, living room, or bedroom. It tells people you're a world traveler, if not literally, at least in the heart. And what better way to annoy the flat earthers? I'm putting a custom link below this video, and if you click on it, you'll get 10% off any 6-inch or 8.5-inch MOVA globe. If you can't access the link for some reason, just go to movaglobes.com and use the code WOA10. Making our way across the province of Muğla, the territory known in ancient times as Caria, we set our sights on Bodrum, a seaside city that was the birthplace of the famous ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who lived in the 5th century BCE. Back then, the city was called Halicarnassus. Halicarnassus was also where one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world stood. Do you know which one? It was the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, of course, also known as the Tomb of Mausolus, who was a ruler of Caria, sometimes we say Caria, in the 4th century BCE. When the Persians controlled the area. That means Herodotus never saw the mausoleum. Yes, the mausoleum was named after Mausolus, and that is where we get the modern English word mausoleum, which refers to an above-ground tomb. The mausoleum, designed by the Greek architects Satyros and Pythias of Priene, was known for its beauty, but unfortunately it was damaged in an earthquake, and by the 1500s of our own era, there wasn't much left. Apparently there was enough to be able to recreate basically what it looked like, and there are bits and pieces of it in museums.
This is a little place here. Supposed to be good.
Along the highway, we stopped to get some lunch at a place called Urfa Sofrası. That morning, we had already visited the site of Tlos, which you can see in our previous episode, so we were ready to refuel our bodies. The internet said the place was good, so we thought we'd try it out. And yes, indeed, we were very satisfied.
Should we use what on it? Everything's good with yogurt.
I think you all should try this liver.
I won't.
Why?
Look at this. So this is homemade ayran.
That's good.
Special cup.
Sometimes they put ice in it. It doesn't have one, but it's tasty.
Yeah, it's very good. We just got
Showed a durum and it's got that.
Halicarnassus was founded by Dorian Greeks, and early on, the city was a member of a Doric hexapolis, consisting of the cities of Kos, Cnidus, Lindos, Cameros, and Ialissus. The name suggests the city may have been older. The territory of Caria was inhabited by people who spoke Carian, which was a Luwian language. The suffix assos on the end of the name Halicarnassus is an indication of an original non-Greek name. One proposal is that it comes from a Luwian word meaning fortress, so maybe this was a Carian settlement before the Dorian Greeks arrived. Don't believe me? Don't be an assos. The site is now occupied by the modern town of Bodrum, but a few remnants of the old city can still be seen, including parts of the ancient walls and the ancient theater. A bit of background, in the 6th century BCE, the entire region of Caria was part of the kingdom of Lydia. Then the Persians invaded and took over. During that time, Caria was a satrapy, province, of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. But local Carian rulers governed the region on behalf of the Persians. One of the more notable Carian rulers was Artemisia I, who made a name for herself during the Second Greco-Persian War, commanding 5 ships in the Battle of Salamis, a naval confrontation between the Greek and Persian forces. She fought on the side of the Persians, but her performance on that occasion was even praised by the Greeks. Anyway, she ruled right here in Halicarnassus. A line of rulers known as the Hecatomnid dynasty ruled Caria beginning in 404 BCE, still during Persian rule. Mausolus, whom I mentioned before, was part of this dynasty, and his residence was here in Halicarnassus. He and his successors spent a lot of money building up and beautifying the city. For the ancient history enthusiast, one of the very best places to visit in Bodrum is the Museum of Underwater Archaeology. It's housed in Bodrum Castle, a medieval fortress that sits right on the water's edge.
There better be a touch tank in there. We're in the town of Bodrum, and we are here to see the Museum of Underwater Archaeology. And it costs 350 lira to get in, which is about $14 so a little bit expensive, but I'm hoping it's well worth it. Very excited to see some mermaids, and here's some sarcophagi that I'm pretty sure some mermaids were buried in. Let's go.
The museum's exhibits feature artifacts found from underwater excavations in the Aegean Sea. From what I understand, it is the largest museum dedicated to underwater archaeology in the world. Some of the stones used to build this castle came from the mausoleum of Halicarnassus.
Yeah, but this is a 1400s fort. The museum is not itself ancient. 1400s, this is like practically yesterday. These are amphorae that were on boats, ships that sunk, carrying heavy loads of valuable product. Yeah, these are ancient anchors here. So they just use heavy stones. These ones are from later times, but these ones on the rack here are ancient.
Many of them, perhaps, because
It depends on the size of the ship.
Excuse me, do you speak English? Can you tell me how to get in there? Is it worth it? Is it worth the cost? Because they're telling us it's 100. No? So we are here to see a special glass shipwreck exhibit, and it's an additional 100 lira to get in, which is about $3 to $4. This cat says it's well worth it.
The Glass Wreck Hall features the Sergilimani shipwreck, which set sail around 1025 CE, so a bit late from our point of view. It is believed the ship was transporting 3 tons of glass cullet to a glass factory somewhere in the Byzantine Empire. But besides that, the hall documents underwater archaeology in general and features some miscellaneous artifacts from even older times.
You can see here the amphorae that were found in the shipwreck. These are commercial amphorae, and they were specifically designed for stacking. That's why they have these shapes, often with the bottoms like this, so they can be held in holders. And they're not dissolvable in seawater, so that's the great for us because they survive the centuries just sitting there underwater.
So apparently the people who discovered all this were really, really tall, large people. Like 4 feet taller than me. Giants.
This particular bronze sculpture was found by a sponge diver, and it's interesting. It dates to between the 3rd and 1st centuries BCE, and what's interesting about it is it was found here in the Mediterranean, but it clearly is representing an African boy, and the way he's holding his hand here, he had a staff in it, so we think he was is representing a geese herding boy, and they say that his stomach enlarged like that may be from the effects of malaria.
In another hall can be found 3 shipwrecks that were found at Yasiada, 2 from the Roman period, 4th century and 7th century, and 1 from the Ottoman period, 16th century.
There was a 7th century shipwreck in the Yasiada area, and this is a model of the ship itself. It's kind of cool because you can see insides of it and how it was built, how ships were made at that time. Not much different than even what they would be made in later times. It's interesting because
The Bozokala Shipwreck Hall exhibits artifacts recovered from a shipwreck that dates back to the Archaic period, 7th to 5th century BCE, and that was hauling hundreds of mortars.
the only known terracotta and limestone sculpture assemblage yet found in the Mediterranean. It means that they have not yet found any terracotta and limestone sculptures in the Mediterranean underwater, except for from this shipwreck.
Basically, each exhibit is in a separate building or tower of the castle, so there's a lot of walking. It makes the museum seem like it has more in it than it actually does, but it is a pleasant place to walk around in. Think of it as a park and a museum.
Well, well, well. We came across one of the great Bronze Age shipwrecks, the Uluburun shipwreck. Come on! Okay, first let's stop off here and talk about the Geladonia shipwreck. This is a very old shipwreck from about 1200 BCE, found at Cape Geladonia, here near Lycia, containing remains from that period. This is the Mycenaean Greek period. That's how old we're talking about here. This is before the Trojan War. This just lifted this museum up a notch. The Uluburun shipwreck is from the 14th century BCE. It's the oldest shipwreck ever excavated in the Mediterranean by archaeologists. And here it is. And we have a reconstruction of what they found underwater to the right, and then a reconstruction of the boat when it was full on the left.
The Uluburun ship was made of Lebanese cedar, and personal effects found in it suggest the crew were Canaanite. The ship was transporting a cargo of copper and tin ingots weighing 11 tons, and the ratio was 10-1, which is exactly the ratio used when producing bronze. Also in the cargo was pottery, some with food in it, and luxury items for wealthy people, like carved ivory containers, jewelry of gold and semi-precious stones. There were even raw materials coming from afar, glass ingots, elephant tusks, ostrich eggshells, and faience beads. Before the ship was discovered, these items were known mainly from Egyptian tomb paintings, but here we have the real thing. Although the crew was Canaanite, a seal of Egyptian Queen Nefertiti on the ship is evidence perhaps that the ship was owned by the Egyptians, and Egyptian royalty at that.
Take a look at this. These are scarabs and cylinder seals from this period. Scarabs, very much in the Egyptian style. And that's a Mesopotamian style cylinder seal in the middle. And these are also scarabs. The things that you see on top are fake. They're not fake. They're just showing you the impression. The real items are below here.
Look at this. We found the original rubber ducky. Ivory duck-shaped vessels.
You know what that is? That is a writing board. And it's hinged. You know, it's got an ivory hinge. And you put beeswax in the recesses, and you can use a stylus to write on it. And then you can rub it, to clear it off and to write again. Pretty cool. They use it for taking notes, things like that. Check out this gold jewelry that was found on board. And this gold pendant, it's amazing. The design tells us it's probably Syro-Palestinian in origin and may have been worn by the crew, who then were probably Syro-Palestinian, Canaanite. Hadassah was an early settlement at Halicarnassus, before Halicarnassus. And we are finding, I guess they found quite a number of things here, including these bronze eyes. They come from the 5th to 4th century BCE, and they were found in the Athena sanctuary. They're made out of bronze. They got bronze lashes, and then they use marblite for the whites of the eyes, and then they have colored glass for the different parts, the iris being green, the pupils being blue. Of course, everyone knows that pupils aren't blue, but you want to make these colorful, especially if they're representing somebody like a goddess. The colors used in eyes are often symbolic, and that's why we shouldn't, in art, take them too literally. Sometimes people like to take an anthropological approach, but we really should be looking at it from an artistic and figurative, symbolic approach. Before Halicarnassus was Halicarnassus, it was called Pedassa, and the people that lived here were called Lelegians. We get that from some of the Greek writers. But what's interesting is we haven't found any writing yet here. We do know that a Carian language was spoken here, and we have Carian script that we've been able to decipher. But there's no evidence that the Lelegians of the city used Carian, so we're really not sure.
Technically, Pedassa wasn't right on the site of Halicarnassus, so to correct myself, it is better to say it was near Halicarnassus, probably a bit to the north, though the same language may have been spoken here. I have to tell you that the view from up here in the castle is fabulous. You can see the ships in the bay, and we happened to be there as the sun was coming down. Just beautiful.
So this is, they found a tomb in this city. This is not underwater, but it's of a princess, and that's her. Well, actually, that's a reconstruction, I think, of her from the skull. So they found the skull.
Rich finds from a tomb discovered here also are on display. The golden crown certainly indicates someone of high social status. Skeletal analysis indicated that the woman died around the age of 40, and her hip bone revealed that she had given birth to more than one child. The quality of her teeth showed that she had a high standard of living. When first found, it was noted that she was similar in appearance to two marble busts of Queen Ada of Caria in the British Museum. Some people think that she was indeed Ada, but the scientific data can't really establish that for certain, so for now, she is just called the Carian Princess. Ada, by the way, ruled Caria from 344 to 340 BCE. Her brother took the throne from her, and then when he died, a Persian was put in charge. That's when Alexander the Great came, and Ada was still around. In fact, she was commanding a large fortress in Alinda to the north of here. When Alexander's army approached the fort, she handed it over to him. Apparently she impressed him because after he took Halicarnassus, he made her the ruler of Caria under him. She reigned until her death in 326.
Thanks.
Can you check?
It's deliberating. We spent last night at the 7 Hotel. Great location, very clean, nice staff, amazing area to hang out front. It's right near the water, so it's walking distance. This is a great tourist destination. So in the summer, a ton of people come here to vacation. It's right by the water. There's gorgeous areas to walk and shop, and you can rent a boat, and tons to see here. So even if you're not here for ancient history, I recommend stopping here if you're visiting Turkey.
Our first stop this morning is the Didyma district in Aydın province. With a population of 97,000, Didyma is a modern coastal resort offering sunny beaches, delicious restaurants, shopping, and even a water park for tourists to cool off in the summer sun. But if you venture toward the northern part of town, you'll find a historic gem. Modern-day Didyma surrounds the ruins of a giant temple dedicated to Apollo, from which today's town is named, Didyma. In fact, it was the 4th largest temple in the ancient world.
All right, so we just arrived at Didyma. It costs 100 lira to get in, which is the equivalent of about $3.80 in US dollars. I'm really excited to see this site. There is a temple of Apollo here, which apparently is very large and impressive, so I'm very excited to see it.
Though today the temple may not be as famous a destination as the Eiffel Tower or the Statue of Liberty, in ancient times it was. People flocked to the Temple of Apollo in Didyma for pilgrimages, festivals, and to consult the renowned oracle of the temple.
We are standing before the great Temple of Apollo here at Didyma. Now, way back when, in the 8th century BCE, just an open-air altar was built here dedicated to a local Anatolian god who had been worshipped for a long time even before that. Then, about 100 years later, in the 7th century BCE, they built a small temple here. But it wasn't until 560 BCE that this temple was constructed, this magnificent temple, and this was made by King Croesus of Lydia. Lydia had an empire here in eastern Anatolia during that period. Well, there's water there. I don't know how far down it goes, but it's definitely an ancient well. Look at the size of these steps. You're probably like supposed to feel awe by coming up here. Like, ooh, this is scary. Oh yeah.
There were people here as far back as the Neolithic period, but in historic times, this strategic location on the coast brought settlers from the island of Crete and others from Mycenaean Greece. In the years to follow, settlers from around the Aegean Sea and from Western Asia Minor came to this area and built a thriving metropolis about 11 miles north of Didyma called Miletus. The people of Miletus were aware of the sacred spot of Didyma and aligned themselves with the site, giving patronage and worshipping Apollo here. Didyma was considered a holy place even before settlers arrived, and the Greeks adopted it as was their habit, and constructed a small rectangular mud brick temple near a sacred spring around 700 BCE. And the Greeks dedicated the temple to Apollo, though there probably was an earlier deity worshipped at the spring before they arrived. The Miletians built a road connecting the city to the temple, called the Sacred Way, and they used this road to travel to Didyma to consult the oracle. Miletus and Didyma were linked in wealth, power, and trade, but we'll talk more about Miletus later.
The most famous oracle of Apollo was, of course, at Delphi in Greece. But the one here at Didyma was probably the second most famous oracle. And what was an oracle? Basically, you would come here to get your fortune. Remember, Apollo is associated with prophecy. Now, at Delphi, you'd bring a question to the oracle, usually and express it verbally. Here at Didyma, they wanted you to write it down. So you'd bring a written question that you would give to Apollo, and then you would get your fortune.
One example of the oracle's popularity is shown in the case of the Egyptian pharaoh Necho II, who dedicated his personal armor to the oracle here in 609 BCE, after a military victory over the king of Judah near the city of Megiddo. Necho probably made the dedication in gratitude to the many Greek and Carian soldiers that assisted him in battle. As the city of Miletus grew in prosperity, so did Didyma. At some point, a great bronze statue of Apollo was erected in this temple, and the yearly festivals and pilgrimages to see the oracle increased the temple's wealth and stature.
Yeah, it is very slippery.
Like a slide.
Yes. Careful.
Open to the sky, this inner sanctuary was at ground level, and a sacred grove of olive trees grew around a building that housed the statue of Apollo. The sanctuary was adorned with Medusa heads, griffins, and the heads of bulls.
So after you brought your question to the oracle, a priestess would do fasting and ritual prayers over the sacred spring, which was originally right here in the Didymaon. And she would then utter a prophecy of Apollo for you. It'd be kind of a fortune. It'd be something that could be interpreted a few different ways so that there's more of a chance of it becoming true, kind of like a fortune cookie type fortune. But you would get a message here from her. Now, in later times, the spring dried up. I think even by the time of the Croesus temple, the spring had dried up and they made a well here instead. And the same sorts of rituals were performed at the well. Interesting story. King Croesus of Lydia, we are told, was being threatened by the Persians, and he wanted to know what was going to happen. And he was planning to go to war with them, but he wanted to get his, oracle from Apollo. So he actually had a message brought here, and he also had one sent to Delphi. And he didn't like the message that he got here. I guess it had something to do that he was going to lose or something. And so he much preferred the oracle that he got from Delphi, which was that if he went to war with Persia, a mighty empire will be destroyed. And he interpreted that to mean Persia. So he's like, I like that one. Well, when he went to war with Persia, he lost, and his mighty empire was destroyed. Oh, Croesus. When the Persians entered this area, the priestly family that operated the temple, they're called the Branchidae family. They trace their lineage back to this legendary figure named Branchos. They surrendered the temple and all of its treasures to King Xerxes of Persia. And he destroyed the temple, stole the statue of Apollo, and took it back to Persia. Well, the people of the city never forgave the priests for that, and the Branchidae ended up fleeing the area. And it went into decline. It practically shut down. And it wasn't until Alexander the Great came in the 4th century BCE and reconquered this area that the temple was reopened. He restored the temple, and he ordered that it be built even bigger. So in the Hellenistic period that followed Alexander, more work was being done on it. These walls that you see around here, just to give you an idea of the size here, these are about 1/3 of the original height. Okay, 1/3 of the original height. These blocks here with all the decorative elements, they were up on the top. Yeah, they went much higher. Because the columns over there, basically as high as that. This has been huge, tall, magnificent building. Anyway, Alexander liked the temple because they gave him a wonderful fortune for himself. But he had not the traditional priestly family operate this temple from that point forward, but the administration of the city of Miletus, which is right nearby. They were in charge of the oracle from that time forward. Look at, we got a couple of complete columns there. Now, archaeologists have estimated that it took about 20,000 work hours for one column to be made, and there were 220 of them in the temple. Can you imagine? That's why 500 years after the temple was started, they still hadn't quite finished it. It was never quite finished.
The Romans also revered the oracle of Didyma. At this time, wealthy aristocrats from Miletus were elected to the position of high priest and served the oracle for a year in this highly influential position. The aristocrats that presided over the temple were entrenched in the politics and commercial trade of Miletus. The office of the high priest here was such a powerful position that even some Roman emperors, like Trajan and Hadrian, took the office of the high priest at Didyma. Of course, the emperors had people to run the day-to-day duties of the office. But the final demise of the oracle at Didyma and the temple was coming. The Roman Emperor Diocletian consulted the oracle regarding those pesky Christians that had been growing in numbers, and though no actual documents survive, it is said that the oracle's advice may have incited the most severe persecution of the Christians ever recorded. In the 5th or 6th century, the Christians confiscated this temple and built their own church on the grounds. The baptistry of the church was located in the inner temple over the ruins of the building that previously housed Apollo's bronze statue. There you can see the remains of the famous road, the Sacred Way, which connected Didyma to the city of Miletus.
Teşekkürler.
Afiyet bal şeker olsun kuzum. Sıkılan portakalları ver o masaya. Hadi kızım. Ben veririm.
So we have seen signs for gosleme everywhere. It's a very popular dish here. So we're eating it now. We have it with spinach, potato, and cheese. It's basically like a thin bread with ingredients inside. It's really delicious.
In order to do gözleme, you need that thin piece of metal, oval-shaped metal. You put bread on it, and it will just cook. You know, it will cook very quickly. And if you turn it upside down, it will have this shape, this kind of shape. And you will put some oil in it, and you will put meat on it, and you will get saç kavurma.
What's that?
Saç is the name of the metal.
Saç, okay.
And kavurma is the cooking method.
Okay.
As I mentioned, the people of Miletus were the ones who maintained the Temple of Apollo and took care of the oracle at Didyma. So we are going to the city of Miletus next. The two locations shared power, wealth, and fame, but also decline and destruction. According to the Greek geographer Pausanias, and take this story with a grain of salt, the Minoans sailed from Crete under a leader named Miletus, who had been sent by King Minos to this location. When they arrived, they encountered the Carians, who were the first peoples to the area, and were ruled by giants. Anax, who was the son of Gaia, the earth goddess, and his son, Asterius, were said to be at least 10 cubits tall, 15 feet, and ruled over the Carians, who had named their peninsula Anatolia. It was said that Miletus attacked Anatolia, killed the giants, and changed the name of the city to Miletus, his name. The Roman geographer Strabo, on the other hand, suggests that the Minoans, led by none other than Sarpedon, the son of Zeus, came from a Cretan city named Miletus, and they named this city after the Cretan city. Yet another story, preserved by Aristocritus, a follower of Plato, and writer in the 5th century CE, says the oldest version of the story is that Miletus was actually the son of Apollo, and he fled to this peninsula in order to escape the affections of King Minos. Then he founded the city and named it after himself. Hittite documents from the 13th century BCE identify this city as Milawanda, also as Milata, and as part of Achiawa, a territory controlled by Atpa, a governor and vassal of the Hittites. Achiawa is a term that may be cognate with Achaia, in other words, Greek territory. But by the end of the 11th century BCE, a new group of Greeks arrived in Miletus from across the Aegean Sea, and recognizing its strategic location, they took control. They liked the idea of their city being founded by the son of Apollo, and so built the Temple of Apollo in Didyma and supported the oracle there.
Wear real shoes to this site, people. Don't wear sandals.
Yet another legend says that Mileus, the son of the famous and possibly mythical Athenian king Codrus, conquered Milawanda and named it after himself. Then he and his army murdered all the men and took their widows as wives. This story was probably meant to legitimize Athenian Greeks' claim of the territory, so it's probably not true.
All right, we just arrived at Miletus. As you can see, this is a massive site. So we're going to start here at the stadium. It is 100 lira to get in, I believe here. I don't know if that includes the whole site yet, but it's 100 lira to get in, which is about $3.80 in US dollars.
By the 7th century BCE, Miletus was a thriving commercial port, and the citizens built a fortification around the city with several defensive towers. These walls were first built with polygonal masonry, then later construction shows rectangular stones were used. Remnants of these walls can still be seen today at the southern end of Theater Hill and in the Theater Harbor area.
Oh, that's pretty far down.
Oh, okay.
What a view. This is a gigantic theater. This is just immense. Wow. Look at the size of this doorway. Wow. Have you seen anything like this today? Do, 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 do. Here. Look, you can get up to some of the higher rows up here or here. Huge theater. This theater held 15,000 people capacity. Unbelievable.
No.
Some famous people lived in this city. Thales, the mathematician and philosopher, lived here in the 6th century BCE. Hecataeus, a geographer and historian from the late 6th, early 5th century too. Isidora, an architect and mathematician who designed the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople with his partner Anthemius of Tralles. And Hippodamus, a philosopher and urban planner credited with developing the concept of a city grid plan. They all hailed from Miletus.
This is the biggest theater we've been to yet. Miletus was a huge, important city. And you can see most of the bottom rows are preserved, but the upper ones not as much. But this held 15,000 people. The Skene is not in the best shape. But what you may not know is all this land that you see over here, this land down in the valley, this was a harbor. There were two harbors in the city. The theater harbor was one of them, and all of that was filled with water at one time. The sea level was higher. And then there was another harbor on that side over there, which we'll go take a look at.
There actually were 4 main harbors in the city. It's just that the remains of 2 are the most prominent. The Lion Harbor, called that because the people of Miletus erected statues of 2 lions to guard it, was built as a closable war harbor and may have served as the military port. Exports, such as wine, olives, olive oil, and wool, would have passed through the harbors of Miletus to the outside world, but imports were also very important to Miletus, as the area lacked mineral ores. Perhaps for this reason they established colonies in commodity-rich areas. Pliny the Elder estimated that the citizens founded 90 colonies around the Black and Mediterranean seas, including the only Greek colony in Egypt at the time, Naucratis.
Originally, the theater stood a whole story higher than what you see today. But this fortress here was built by the Byzantines, and they used stone from the upper tier to build the fort. Okay, we're going to go up through the fort and get a bird's eye view of the city. Okay, we're here at the back of the Byzantine fort on top of the theater, and you can get a good bird's eye view of the city. Now, beyond that, right over there, that's where the other harbor was. It was called the Lion Harbor. And then here is a main part of the city with the agora down. Well, there's 2 agoras, one here and over here. So we're going to go down there and check out some of the remains. And during the winter, it gets kind of marshy, but right now in the summer, everything's dry.
In the early 5th century BCE, Miletus banded together with the other Ionian cities of Asia Minor and fought the Persians for their freedom. The Ionian revolt lasted from 500 to 494, when Miletus lost their fleet at the Battle of Lada. The Persians stormed the shores, enslaved or killed the citizens, destroyed Miletus, and plundered its temple at Didyma, as I mentioned before. The tables were turned when the Greeks finally defeated the Persians in 479 at the Battle of Plataea in Greece, and Miletus was liberated from Persian rule. But due to a peace agreement in 386, Miletus came again under Persian control. Finally, in 334, Alexander the Great conquered the Persians at Miletus, ending Persian rule for good. During the Hellenistic period, Miletus passed through the hands of many different rulers. The fight for control over Miletus carried on until 133 BCE, when Rome took over.
I'm telling your parents.
They won't believe you. They won't even understand you.
Oh, that's
I'm winning on it.
See how pretty these flowers are when they're... Look.
It's not too bad out today. Come on, you gotta admit. It's not too bad. It isn't like it was at Perga. Right now, the record goes to Perga. That was the hottest city we have ever been in.
It was 95 degrees.
Yeah.
Like hell.
And it was a beautiful place. I wanted to stay longer, but it was just so hot.
Under Roman rule, Miletus began to rebuild. That's when the theater, which was originally built in the 4th century BCE, was expanded into what you saw. They built a 32-meter Doric-style stoa to house shops on the waterfront, and they upgraded the Delphinium, which was the starting point of the sacred way that led to Didyma.
So here we are at what is left of Apollo's dolphin sanctuary.
This is all that's left of the Delphinion, a once great temple dedicated to an animal very sacred to Apollo, the dolphin, Apollon Delphinion. And what's interesting about this is that this temple was connected to the one at Didyma that we saw by a road. We saw part of the road on the other end, and there's still some pavement you can see here, but the road went southward down towards Didyma, connecting the 2 sacred places of Apollo. Right along here was a stoa, 99 meters long. We call it the Ionic stoa because it's colonnaded by these columns in the Ionic style. You can tell from the column capitals at the top. And then it formed an entrance to go into the baths over there. Those are called the Baths of Capito.
The Romans seemed to love Miletus, and in 19 BCE, Augustus Caesar visited the city. Yeah, Augustus Caesar, the first emperor. We're walking where Augustus may have walked, and a new temple was built in his honor.
All right, this here was the city center, okay? What we're looking at over there is the Nymphaeum, all right? Over to the right, there was a monumental gate that led to the South Agora. Back there in the corner, there was a Christian church that was built there. And then over here behind me was the Bouleuterion, where the city council met, in this building right here.
Miletus kept its stature as a major commercial city, a center for culture and philosophy, and prospered for some time. In 101 CE, the Emperor Trajan funded the rebuilding of the Sacred Way.
Coming out of the Bouleuterion here, now we're on the Sacred Way, right? This is led from the city center, where a sacred procession would be held, going from the temple of Delphinius and then coming down here. And this went all the way to Didyma, to the temple of Apollo. And at certain times of the year, there would be a sacred procession down this way. Look at these. How many tons would you say one of these stones is? These are huge megaliths, right? Marble, but huge. I would say one of these blocks, now I don't know how far deep in they go. Let's see. Okay, they're about this thick, okay? But they're pretty big, heavy. Does it take super advanced technology to make something like this? Just takes Roman know-how, skills in engineering. This is just part of the Bouleuterion. Yeah, I think it was much higher, of course, and they just pile it on here for us. There would have been columns, you know. Popular in the Greek world and then in the Egyptian world. Baths of Faustina. It's got to be the Baths of Faustina. Yeah, they look like baths.
Oh, yeah.
The Baths of Faustina were probably donated by Faustina the Younger, daughter of Emperor Antoninus Pius and wife of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, on the occasion of her visit to Ephesus in 164. She probably never came to Miletus, though. An inscription testifies that the spa was called the Baths of Faustina even in ancient times.
Here we are at the Baths of Faustina. This is a Roman period bathhouse. Who's Faustina? Faustina was Marcus Aurelius' wife. Yes, and they sponsored the building of the baths in the city. It shows that in that period, in the Roman Empire, this city, Miletus, was receiving imperial patronage. Ooh, look at this, man. Wow. Now it looks like there's been some modern work done here. But look at the size of these original stones. Wow. How would you like to come into these baths? This is the great hall of the bath, where the warm baths were. Caldarium.
The route of the bather is as follows, and this is traditional for all bath complexes. You would start with the cold room, the frigidarium, then make your way to the warm room, tepidarium, and then enter the hot room, caldarium. And then you would end up in the sweat chambers at the southeast corner of the complex. The complex was refurbished during the 3rd century.
Here we are in the Frigidarium. The cold pool was here. And you can see they probably had a statue on all four sides, but probably 2 lions here. But at the front end over there, that is the river god Meander. Now these are replicas. The originals are in the museum, but this is where they were found, where they were placed inside here, inside this room.
Once Christianity took root in the empire, Miletus became the seat of an archbishop.
So we are at the museum at Miletus, and it is 100 lira to get in here, which is again about $3.80.
The museum at Miletus is rather small, but it is worth taking a look at. You can see everything in about 15 to 20 minutes. Miletus went into decline in the later Roman Empire. In the 13th century, the Turks took control of the area and used the harbor for trading, but by this time the rich and prosperous ancient city of Miletus was a whisper of its former self, and it would only be a matter of time before the silt from the Meander River completely erased the Latmian Gulf and forced Miletus to close its harbors. Our next episode is going to be particularly exciting, as we will be going to arguably the most famous of all archaeological sites in Turkey, Ephesus, a massive and remarkably well-preserved city that every lover of ancient history should see at least once in their lives. We will show you things that will blow your mind, so stay tuned and make sure to subscribe.